Okay. Our people get excited over our great basketball player, Doncic, who is making us proud in NBA. Our ski jumpers are at the top of the world, driving through the country. One can see jumbos inviting to fire brigade organized parties. And I know that thousands will participate. So I repeat asking myself, why do the people not want to see the obvious? Is something wrong with me and my small circle of colleagues, or is something wrong with most of the people around us? So this will be shortly about the situation in Slovenia.
Okay, Blush, thank you. Since you introduced Natalia, I'll let Natalia, my very dear friend from Yerevan in Armenia. Natalia, so good to see you as always. Welcome to this initial meeting of this group that I know is going to grow. So go ahead and take it away. A little bit about you and how you see things unfolding in Armenia and your part of the world.
Good evening, everyone. It's 7 p.m. here, a little past 7 p.m. here in Yerevan. Well, my name is Natalia. I represent the Reformist Party of Armenia, and I'm also editor-in-chief of infopress.am. It's a very small not mass, but media resource. Our party is positioning itself as more pro-Russia orientated, and saying pro-Russia, I mean we think it's vital for Armenia to rebuild its strategic alliance with Russia, which is being now systematically destroyed by current authorities in Armenia that were brought to power as a result of a color revolution in 2018. I'm sure you've all heard of it. And it fits in a row of color revolutions as it has been in Georgia, twice in Ukraine, also in Maghreb, in North African countries, the famous Arab Spring. So we have suffered the same thing here in Armenia. And we believe our position is that Armenia is not only historically tied with Russia, but we also bear similar civilizational memory, being in Eastern Christian civilizations, both Armenians and Russians. So we have a lot in common. And we have nearly nothing in common with the so-called collective West, which represents all the destructive things that we face now in Armenia, such as legalization of soft drugs, this LGBTQ plus propaganda, revising the history, starting from denial of the results of the Great Patriotic War, as we call it, and Second World War, as they call it in the West. And we think that all of that is not acceptable for us, for Armenians, as for a traditional culture. What's going on in Armenia now? Well, of course, it didn't start just recently. It has been planned, I'm sure, in different rooms in the same collective West, in London, in Washington, and probably also in Brussels, in Paris, everywhere. And it all started from the 44-day war in Nagorno-Karabakh, when Azerbaijan unleashed this unprecedented military actions against Armenians. It is important, just one brief remark, Armenians have been living in Artsakh for recorded by historians, over 1,500 years uninterrupted. They've always been Armenians there. And today, after the 19th of September of 2023, not one Armenian is living in Nagorno-Karabakh now, because this Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, was brought to power by certain centers of power in the West. announced that Nagorno-Karabakh is the territory of Azerbaijan. But of course, Azerbaijan didn't stop there. What they want now is the corridor, as the previous speaker said already. And this is not just a piece of land. If you look at it, it will only be a 43-kilometer long corridor. It's the narrowest part of Armenia. But the importance of it for the West is vital, because this is the road that's going to connect Turkey through Azerbaijan to the Central Asian countries. And we all know what kind of cargo is going to move from Turkey through Armenia, through Azerbaijan to the Central Asian countries. This is exactly the cargo that Russia and China wouldn't want to have there. And the stakes are very high. And Turkey is being supported by the Brits for the last 300 years. And this is like undoubtable. We all know that this is how it works for Turkey. The only country in the South Caucasus region which is against this corridor is not Armenia. No, it's Iran. Because Iran has several times, multiple times during these 3 years announced its position that Iran will not tolerate change of any borders in the region. Even Armenia is not against it, because Prime Minister Pashinyan and his team, they are pretty much in favor of that. They do know that they will have to trade something in exchange for giving this corridor, and they're not yet sure probably how much they will want to get, or what would they want to trade, or who would like to trade with them, because now the situation between Armenia and Azerbaijan is being discussed by, for example, Hakan Fidan, representative of Turkey, and representatives of Washington, and nobody is even asking opinion of Armenia. So our fate is being decided outside Armenia by third parties, and our opinion is not even being taken into consideration. And we have nobody to blame but ourselves, because the government that we have now is totally anti-Armenian, and it's not pushing forward Armenian agenda. It's more pushing forward Azerbaijan interests of Azerbaijan and Turkey rather than interests of Armenia. This is briefly what's happening in Armenia now. A big danger if what's been announced in Washington through strange Israeli mass media about attack against Iran, this is definitely going to be vital for Armenia, because obviously we're neighboring countries. Not to consider the military consequences for us, we're going to be flooded by refugees, and we don't have the strategic depth to, obviously we understand, we know what refugee is, what it is to be a refugee, but we don't have the strategic depth to accommodate everybody. So this is only one of the problems that we're going to face if this really happens. This is briefly what's happening in our region and in Armenia particularly now. And thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here, and I'm sure this group is going to grow.
Thank you, Natalia. Would anybody like to make a comment or ask a question of Natalia? We'll obviously have time after we go through everybody, but it's kind of like freeform right now.
I'll ask one.
Tony Long, go ahead.
Well, for the average Armenian citizen, what is the attitude toward Russia these days? Because I hear conflicting things all the time.
Yeah, it depends on what numbers you look. If you take the Gallup numbers, Gallup is a very famous research company that's being engaged by different political groups to run research, which the results of which are being used merely to form opinion. So if you look at Gallup, it shows a drastic drop of positive attitude towards Russia. If 4 years ago you ask an average Armenian who is the best friend of Armenia, first line would definitely be Russia, then France, then probably United States, and so on. Today, Russia occupies third or fourth horizontal. First is France, which is, there's no reason for that. But as I see as an analyst, because I'm in it every day, I know that there is no objective reason for France being considered our best friend. But if we look at the information campaign that's being organized in favor of France being our friend because they sell us certain ammunition, which is, I mean, it doesn't play any role, this ammunition, because they only give us one part of a large complex and the other parts cannot be brought to Armenia because there's no logistic for it to be brought to Armenia. So it's all on the informational level. Look how good friend, what kind of a good friend France is for us. And look at those Russians, they didn't support us. So today what we're facing is a significant drop in positive attitude towards Russian Federation as a country, not towards Russians as, you know, people, because we have lots of, we call them relocants, people who left Russia after the beginning of the special military operation. Thousands of them live in Armenia without any problem. They're not facing any difficulties. If you follow TikTok, all the Russian TikTokers are there saying good things about how friendly Armenians are and how they like to be here. But as a state, Russian Federation lost its position. Today, for some strange reason, Armenian population in Armenia mostly think that France is our best friend.
That's interesting. Thank you, Tony, for the question, and Natalia. Let's go over to our friend in Thailand. Eric, can you hear me? Turn your mic on. Unmute. There you go.
Okay.
Can everybody hear
can you-
Eric?
Hello?
Okay, he's my my best friend, Buddhist monk.
I don't have a lot of competition.
Go ahead, Eric. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you see things in Thailand as an American expat, and however you want to see things going on in the world. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, Thailand, Natalia, like Armenia, has a lot of expat Russians. And these expat Russians also are very negative towards the Russian Federation. They really have, you know, this is the problem here is that liberal ideology is very pervasive. You know, it manifests in its most extreme form and as LGBT, and that kind of quote unquote liberal ideology, and it weaponizes human rights in order to turn everything upside down. So people who are the people who are in Armenia are Russians who simply don't understand the history. They don't understand what the hell is going on in the world and the stakes that are there. So, and this is a problem everywhere. And I see it, I would say, Thailand is also very interesting because everybody who's in Thailand doesn't want to be in the country where they're from. You know, so the Chinese here don't like China, and the Russians don't like Russia, and Ukrainians. Most of the Ukrainians are here because they don't want to fight in the war, but they still hate Russia. You know, they don't understand, you know, how their country has been you know, victimized by the West. So there's a tremendous amount of ignorance, basically ignorance. Just like Blaz talked about earlier. I got the last part of what he was saying. But the propaganda is so thick in the world right now that it's very, you know, unless people are really willing to do the research, they really don't understand what's going on. If you listen to mainstream media, you're stupid. You know, you're stupid because they want you to be stupid, and you're stupid because you should know by now, having been lied to again and again and again, why do you believe these people, and yet you still listen to them. And I imagine that it's probably exactly the same thing in Armenia. I don't know why I don't know, Natalia, you can explain, you know, how Russia let Armenia down, that that Armenia, now has a grudge against Russia, but basically it's the same issue here as it is in other countries, and even here in Thailand. This whole color revolution issue is a major factor as well, because the U.S. disinformation agents are everywhere, and as long as there's an NGO, you can be pretty sure that USAID or not, there's money being pumped in here to screw up people's brains. So that's basically what's going on here.
Eric, just a little bit of a brief background on you.
Okay, so I come from all four of my grandparents are Ashkenazi Jews, from Eastern Europe, and I grew up. My grandmother once told me that her whole family had been killed by the Nazis. So I have a kind of genetic, fear of Nazis, and I really don't like them. I think they're really dangerous, and I've always worried about them making a comeback, and sure enough, they have. So that's one aspect of my personality. I also I went to a Jewish summer camp, a Zionist summer camp, so I was, immersed in that whole thing. But for some reason, I didn't quite buy it, and at a certain point, I just thought, I don't buy into monotheism. As a Buddhists have a more, what I would say is a kind of a more affinity with quantum physics than with monotheism. So, but it doesn't mean that we're opposed to monotheism. It just means that we just have a different way of, it's a different operating system, but it's not, Apple computers can operate with Microsoft computers and Linux computers. They can all interoperate. It's all fine, but this is my operating system. As far as my interest in, I became interested in Buddhism because I felt that it gave me some tools to understand both myself and also the outside world. So one of my mottos is question everything. And my blog site is called Inquiry and Thinking. So the way out of conditioned thinking is by questioning. When we question, we're going outside of the box of the Overton window. So and I've always been like that. And early on, I think my first inkling is to I always knew that things were weird, but I've always been on the left. I would say on the fairly far left. I'm not like a hardcore communist, but I would say I'm kind of like a socialist sympathizer, communist sympathizer, and I also think that as I was talking with a couple of Buddhist friends of mine today, and I was saying that communism is about the idea of taking a society and uplifting the whole society so that everybody is working for the benefit of everybody else simultaneously. And when everybody is working in concert with each other to help each other, you will build a positive society. In Buddhism, there's an idea called the bodhisattva, which means that we're not trying to save ourselves. We're trying to help we're trying to save other people before ourselves. So when you have a society where people are trying to uplift each other, then you have more success than one that's based on rank individualism and competition and things like that. So that aspect of how I think, and the other aspect is that in order to break through these very destructive patterns that we're all familiar with and what Blaz talks about in great detail, it boils down to really questioning what is going on when some news source says something or some government official says something. We have to question it. And the Buddha actually gave a talk about this 2,500 years ago. He said, people came and they'd say, this guy says this and that guy says that. What do you think? He says, don't believe anybody. Do your own research and figure it out for yourself. Don't believe me just because I appear to be a holy man, and don't believe CNN, and don't believe RT even, or any of them. You have to cross-check your information, and then use your native intelligence and you use your critical thinking to this is the way we'll free ourselves from this. But it takes energy and effort, and the problem is that most people are systematically discouraged from doing that. So that's our task, is we have to untangle people's brains so that they're able to actually see what's going on.
Thanks, Eric. This is a lot about what Blaz and I have been talking about. We got to start being able to untrain ourselves and untrain other people so that we can begin to discover a new way of being. As you mentioned, Eric, everybody helping everybody. I want to say this because Eric mentioned he does a blog just about every day.
No, it's more like twice a week, I would say.
Okay.
I work on it every day, but I don't post every day.
All right.
I want to be. We have to be accurate. Accuracy is very important, Regis. I don't want to, over promote myself here.
Well, I'll do the promoting here. It's an incredible blog. It's not for everybody. It's for people who think, and for people who want to take time to listen and absorb what Eric offers. He does a video blog, and there's always a transcript with it. What I'm going to do, now that the 6 of us have met, I'm going to share your emails with each other. And in Eric's case, he has a blog. Blush has a website, right, Blush? You don't do a blog, do you? Unmute your mic. Unmute.
Thank you for reminding me. I must confess that my group, we have two institutes actually, but we were, after several years of intensive communication here nationally, we became sort of disillusioned. People just don't want to get involved in critical thinking, so we are more internally oriented now. We have our Facebook profile. I write some articles. I am engaged in some international communications, but we are not very active in external communication because the activities of global deep states are so intense that all the NGOs, all the civil society, not to speak about the mainstream media, it's all so instrumentalized and people so deeply hypnotized that we simply do not see the preparedness of the people to accept critical systemic thinking. And I'm not trying to blame people as masses. The most disappointment for me comes from my contacts with Slovenian academic elite. I have one academic who was also successful in the United States and so on, who is at least partially ready to openly discuss some questions, and we have an agreement on the more realistic attitude towards Russia and towards the role of a national state. But even he does not want to go all the way. So academia in Slovenia, like in the whole world, is totally under control of DARPA, which means pyramid of power is controlling everybody. So we are listening for situation to become more worse than now. And maybe then people will start looking for some realistic answers. But just to conclude, this is the worst time of the history of 1,400 years of Slovenians in this location, because even in the worst of times, we have had our national elites who were able to say who is the enemy, who is the friend, and what to do, even if they lost. We were killed through the history en masse. But we also had some successes. In 1941, 15 organizations of people here in Slovenia organized to resist Hitler and Mussolini and Croatian fascists and Hungarian fascists. They were all for invading Slovenia at that time.
Wow.
Now we don't have academic elite that would be ready to discuss openly things and to accept the basic of the discussion that European Union is a super fascist entity organized to rob and poison its citizens. Unfortunately, we had to come to this conclusion, but people on the highest level are afraid of even thinking, let alone talking about such things. It was a long way of saying why we are very selectively present in public, and that of course I will be happy to establish connection via email and maybe then exchange a little bit deeper texts and so on.
Yeah, thank you for that, Blush. Eric, I'll come to you in just a second. Maybe you'll pick up on that, but we're looking for people who think critically, and we're trying to establish a network of people who can think systemically. And as we proceed in these discussions, to be able to think systemically is very, very important. Eric, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, Blaz, my recent blog post is called Mission to Moscow. It's a movie made in 1943 about a businessman, a corporate lawyer in the United States who is sent to the Soviet Union by Franklin Delano Roosevelt because he wants to get some objective information, what was actually going on in the Soviet Union at that time, because he knew that there was a lot of fascist propaganda going on in the United States. That's what the movie is about. And this guy came back and he said, the Soviet Union is being reviled and it's not fair. And this is the truth. Our systems are different, but we respect each other. Facebook just removed that post.
Wow. Wow. Well, Eric, you'll be happy to know that I shared it on my Substack, and it's doing quite well there. And my good friend Bruce Gagnon, who's the coordinator of the global network, has been asking me to send him the link to that film so he can put it on his blog. And he has a really extensive international network. I'll provide the link for all of you. It's an amazing movie. Anyway, Eric, thank you for that. We're going to go to a recent good friend of mine who is a brilliant thinker. He's an author of many books. I'm going to let Ron Ridenour, who's an American, been living in Denmark for, I don't know, what seems forever. But Ron, tilt your camera down just a bit so that if you're moving around, we don't lose. That was a little too much. Okay, right there. Take it away, Ron. A little bit about your background. It's amazing. And any thoughts you might have about what's going on in Denmark, like maybe Donald Trump wanting to buy it or take it. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, well, that's one of the best things I think he said, because I had thought already in 2016, and now again, that if he won, he could maybe be so obnoxious, so he has been, now is even more so, that maybe the European people, the colonies, Europe is basically a colony of the United States since 1945, and they've had, better privileges than all the other colonies. But at any rate, they've always been under the United States. And Denmark has fought in all their wars. And, I wrote a series. Anyway, I thought that this would bring the European leaders, even in political parties, to wake up and say, hey, maybe we should have our own sovereignty. And maybe something like that is happening, but it's going in the wrong direction. So my hope is false. I mean, that's to say that now the European leadership is more hawkish than even Trump, at least with the proxy war against the country where you live. And that's the country that I most support today. I've always supported Cuba. I lived in Cuba for 8 years. I've written 6 books about Cuba. I was born of a typical Yankee father who, became a military man and raised me to join the Air Force to fight the Russians in 1956. And they sent me to Japan, and the barracks were segregated. And I went to a bar where only black GI should go. And I got beaten in the snow because, I was not a good enough white American because I had black friends. That's the United States of America that I left. And I don't even like to be called an expat because I'm no patriot. And I think the United States is the worst country in the world. And I'm consumed with hate. And it's it's a very terrible way to live. And now I'm in Spain, and my love has dement, and she's fading, and she broke her leg, and and now we have problems of health and getting back to Denmark. But what is Denmark today? It is no longer 100% lackey of the United States, but it's a lackey of warmongering. It prouds itself with being the greatest donor of weapons and money, in money translation, of any country in the world. And 57 countries are supporting fascist Ukraine. And the Danes, 6 million people, are giving more per quota per person than any other country in the world, including Yankeelandia. And now, on top of that, they're number 4 in absolute money given to fascism in Ukraine. And I just got through seeing, I write for CAM mostly, Covert Action Magazine, and also for Finney Cunningham's, Strategic Cultural Foundation. And if anybody wants to look anything up, I think the most important thing that I could say now that I've written is the series of 6 Scandinavian, the happiest people in the world love killing for the USA. It's a very long title. I'm sorry about that. But the point is, they are always, number one, the 5 European countries, Scandinavian countries are always in the top 5 to 6 of, the happiest people. And fascist Finland, with 1,340 kilometers now, with Yankee troops there and fascist Finns there. And, remember the Finns, fought with the Nazis, Germany, in Russia for 3 years. And what else is it to remember? I'm always wanting to remember things, and I write things down. Oh yeah, Spain. We're in Spain now, and Spain is the least contributor of the pro-fascist donors from Europe. They have given only 1.2% of their GNP, and now they're going to give 2%. But they stopped a Danish ship, lovely, lovely Danes, peace-loving Danes. Fuck me. I mean, they love killing, I'll tell you that. And they sent a ship with weapons to fascist Israel, and the anti-socialist socialist president here, Sanchez, stopped it. They wouldn't let it dock, so it had to dock somewhere else. So that's something positive about Spain. But I'm about to go back to the greatest warmongering European. The Mette Frederiksen, a so-called social democrat, is in this group of the hardcore. They want troops there. They want they want Russia to suffer, and they're afraid. They were afraid that Russia would win quicker because Trump was going to come in and do something good about something. And and they didn't want Russia to win quickly because they actually said, I mean, they actually wrote, I mean, you can read it in what I've written in CAM in the last couple of months, that their Secret Service said that without any evidence, without any proof, they just said that the Russians are preparing. There are 3 stages. After they win in Ukraine, they will then invade a neighboring land, not a NATO. Within 2 years, they will invade 1 or 2 NATO lands in Europe. And within 5 years, they will have a general war in Europe. Now, this is a people of 140 million that have got a lot of fucking problems, and these assholes, there's nobody in the media. There's nobody that asks any questions. There's nothing taught. There's not. I used to be able to write for the Danish media. I can't write for the Danish media. I have a book. Oh yeah, you might want to know something about my book. That's how Regis and I met. The Russian peace threat, Pentagon on alert. It's 5-6 years old now, but it has great background on what's happening in the world today. That book can't be, there's nothing in this country. It's like, it's like basically done the McCarthy period when it didn't do it before. It's now the McCarthy period. And the people do nothing. There's no protest. There's nobody, not so-called communist parties, Trotskyist parties, socialist parties. There's nobody out there for Russia. There's nobody out there for world peace. There's some out there for Palestine. And then what is this? They had a demonstration the other day for Palestine. I'm always giving money to Palestine demonstrations. And what is it? The hands-off organizers, and they support NATO. Somebody wrote that. I saw it in Dissident Voice. I saw it in LA Progressive. They support NATO, and they say it's a peace organization. Where the hell is where is anybody doing anything for Russia and to prevent a world war? So I'm very discouraged, and I'm sorry. There's nothing I can do about it. My hands are tied with a very sick person, and I still write a little bit, and I basically become misanthropic, And I think the Buddhist and the communist and Gandhi and Jesus Christ, we're all good people. But there's just not enough, and 8.3 billion people, there's just too many people and more people and more people dying and more wars. We've got more wars going on now than ever before. And I fought every war since 1961. Been in jail many times, lived 8 years in Cuba and Nicaragua, and worked for the presidents of Bolivia and Chavez, and at any rate, I'm sick of the world and really depressed. And this is a terrible message to give to people who are fighting, and we need to fight. And I always, Che, I'll end with Che. Che is my man. And to the Eric who talks about Buddhism and the way you talked about communism, I really appreciate that. And I think Che would be here and say the same thing. He said, the thing I always want people to read, if you're going to read anything, is what Che wrote in in an Uruguay magazine, that you can't really be a revolutionary if you don't embody love, love of humanity. What the hell are we fighting for? Love, but that means, like, we don't kill animals, we don't kill people just unless it's somewhat absolute necessary, if they're about to kill you, I suppose. But I mean, there's enough here, and always has been, for all the people, that we don't need any wars and killings and criminality. If we just ate what we could produce and shared what we produced, and you can call it what the fuck you want to call it, but the one word you can't call it is capitalism. That's enough said.
Well, Ron, you got good company here. I don't know if we can get you out of your depression, but I think meeting with us and others who are going to be part of this group, they're going to be happy to know you. I'm happy and I'm honored to know you, and I think you're an incredible thinker. Uh, and you've accomplished so much with your books and your work in Cuba, Nicaragua, Bolivia. Was it Bolivia?
Yeah, Bolivia and Venezuela, and yeah.
Venezuela. So I'm happy you're with us. I think everybody else will appreciate your participation. We're going to go now to a newspaper man, a good friend from San Francisco, Tony Long. Tell us a little bit about yourself and then have at it.
Okay, but before I do, I'd like to ask Ron, in the years you lived in Cuba, did you ever come across a guy named Tony Ryan? Did you know Tony?
Tony Ryan sounds familiar.
He was with the Venceremos Brigade.
Yeah, well, probably so. I worked
Yeah.
with I worked with
Tony
them.
was a good friend of mine here in San Francisco. He traveled to Cuba probably 30 times. He cut sugar cane for the revolution.
Okay.
And
Well, I'm
when I
sure we
went to
met.
when I
Yeah.
went to Cuba in 2013, he facilitated my introduction to a number of people and made that a very memorable trip. So
Okay.
yeah, he died a couple of years ago, unfortunately. He was a
Uh,
he actually went into a bar one night and drank all their vodka to the point where they couldn't serve vodka to anybody else.
I guess he
And that
wanted
killed
to.
him eventually. So
I guess
rest in
that's
peace.
I guess that's what
And
the way he wanted to go.
that's exactly how he went. But anyway, my name's Tony Long. I'm a retired newspaper man and also the son of a newspaper man. So I grew up in the business. Born and raised in San Francisco. And one of the disadvantages, I love my hometown. I love my city. I don't particularly love the country it's attached to. But one of the disadvantages to living out here, way out here on the West Coast, particularly after listening to all of you, is how isolated I am out here. And California is in many ways isolated from the rest of the United States as well. So there's that double feeling of being isolated. Um, you know, I frequent a cafe here in San Francisco, and a lot of my friends are educated, intelligent people. Uh, when I've tried to engage them on what's happening in Ukraine and try to tell them the truth, they don't want to hear it. Um, it's very frustrating. One of the reasons that brings me here, aside from my basic agreement with you guys, is otherwise I'd be just talking into a vacuum. So, and I'm listening to all of you, and what you're activists and you're doing practical things. Whether it's in Slovenia or Armenia or wherever. I don't have that ability out here. I'm not particularly an activist. It's not really in my personality to get out and do stuff like that. But what I am is now is an aspiring novelist. And the way I can contribute, and I've mentioned this to Regis, I'm working on a novel. It's a novel, basically in very simplistic terms. It's a love story between an American man and a Russian woman, and it's contemporary. And it's obviously going to be much more than just a love story, obviously. And I've already asked Regis that when I finish the first draft, and I'm a torturously slow writer because I can't do what Hemingway said, which was just write the goddamn thing and then go back and fix it. As he very famously said, all first drafts are shit. But I'm an editor by profession and by temperament. And when I've written something and I know it's not good, I go back and mess with it. So it's slowing me down. But I will finish. And when I finished, I asked Regis if he would put that in front of some of his Russian friends, because I would like Russians to vet it for accuracy, for temperament, for emotional. Am I getting it right? I would also be willing to put it in front of anyone here who would care to read it and give me feedback. All novelists need feedback. So I don't know when this is going to happen. I've just come back from a month in Europe, traveling with my ex-wife, which is a whole other story, and a good one, actually. So I haven't been writing for over a month, so I have to get back in the saddle, and it takes a while to get going again. But that's what I'm working on, and that's how I see my contribution. I'm more of a background guy. I'm not a guy who's going to go out and lead. I can see that in some of you people, but that's just not my temperament. So I want to be very active with this group to the extent that I can, but my overall contribution will be writing. I'm willing to write essays if you want, or I'm willing to write anything, frankly. That's how I can probably contribute. I'm not a guy with a megaphone. It's not my temperament. So that's who I am. As far as how I grew up and why I feel the way I feel, I mean, my father, when I was a child, I grew up in Cold War America, and but my father was he was a socialist, I guess it'd be fair to say. He was an FDR Democrat, is probably what he was. But he was always very sympathetic to the Soviet Union and its aspirations. He wasn't blind to its failures, but he was sympathetic to what they were trying to achieve versus what capitalist America was trying to achieve. And so I can remember, for example, sitting in my bedroom playing with my toy soldiers. I think I've told this story before to this group or the other group. And I was sitting there setting up my soldiers, and my dad poked his head in the door and he looked at me and all he said was, "Remember, the Red Army beat Hitler." He walked away. So, I mean, that's kind of where I grew up with. And so I've always been a Russophile. I love Russian culture, Russian literature, Russian music. I've always been very engaged with that. And it's kind of a lonely thing to be out here because everybody, they live in a different world. And so I do. So this is a world I can kind of connect to and feel kind of comfortable and perhaps at some point even wanted. And that's a good thing. I still want to come to Russia very badly. In fact, when I was in France just last month, I hinted to my ex-wife, I said, why don't we just bat over to Russia? I mean, I knew we couldn't, but I just wanted to see her reaction. And it was the predictable reaction. What, are you crazy? So, but I do want to come and not just come, I want to stay for a while. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to work toward that goal. But in the meantime, I'm excited to be here. I'm happy to be here. I don't doubt that this group will grow. And I just wish us all the best going forward. And the only other thing I would add is in terms of what's happening right now in the world, Trump is Trump. And as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter who's in the Oval Office. It's the system that stinks. And so whatever. But what I am concerned about is, and I'd really like to hear from Regis or any of you on this, is I've been watching the Russian reaction to, or the Russian dance they're doing with the United States right now. It's kind of a dance, and I know it's a delicate dance, but I saw a headline today where Putin says he kind of favors a ceasefire, and I don't want to see that happen. I mean, Russia's got the whip hand here, and they need to go out and win this thing and dictate the terms, because the United States will sign anything, but they'll never live up to it. So go out and win the goddamn war, and you dictate the terms, and you can tell the United States to piss off. And if they don't like it, who cares? All right, over to you.
Thanks, Tony. I'm happy.
Hey, I want to say something. Hello?
Yeah,
Hello.
go ahead.
I wanted to right on, Tony. I say I like hearing who you are, and the last thing you just said has to be said as loudly and clearly as we can to anybody that you're writing for or about, and put that in your Russian novel. Well, it'll be too late when that comes out anyway. But
Yeah, I'm not going to make that deadline.
you're not going to make that deadline, right? But I mean, I wish we could get to Putin somehow, and let him know. I wish there were people that I could touch. I can't touch you people. There's no one in my life I can touch. This is how sad I am and how isolated I am. I understand your isolation. I am even more isolated. There is nobody
come on.
in
We're
Denmark.
sending you a little love, Ron. Tony?
Yeah, but it's like, online. I'm talking about somebody I can touch. I don't know anybody that understands what's going on and supports Russia.
I'm touching you right now. I got my finger on your nose.
Okay. Well, I just think that it's very important that Putin does not give in, and he hasn't so far. And I think that he's playing the man.
Let me give you my perspective. I've been living in Russia now in Yalta for 5 years. I no longer listen to any of the legacy media coming from anywhere. I stopped listening to all the experts, the bloggers. You know, I'm not going to mention the names, but they're the ones that are getting 100,000, 200,000 views and subscribers. So none of them seem to be able to look at things from the Russian perspective. Now, I can tell you this, that Vladimir Putin is playing Donald Trump like a drum. He says, oh, sure, we'd like to have these negotiations, these talks. But Putin has said it very clearly. Here is what is non-negotiable. There's no territory that is going to be given back. Not Crimea, not the other republics that have joined the Russian Federation. Number two, never, ever is NATO going to be is Ukraine going to be part of NATO? The three goals which he set out at the beginning of the special military operation. Number one, the demilitarization of Ukraine. That means not just the Ukrainian army, all of NATO, all of the mercenaries, all of the advisors are going to be gone. The denazification of Ukraine. Oh my God, I'm not going to go into that here, but that's going to take a re-education project that's going to take a long time. It's been 80 years since this Nazi indoctrination and education has taken over all of Western Ukraine. The third, oh my God, I lost it. Is no NATO.
Crimean, and Donbass. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not going to be no territory that's going to be exchanged. And finally, what Putin has been saying, as well as Sergei Lavrov and their spokespeople, until we address and solve the root causes of this conflict, nothing is going to happen. We'll keep talking to you guys, and it's really good because we've probably, for now, avoided a nuclear war, although Trump might start it if he goes and bombs Iran. But those root causes in Putin's mind and in his words go all the way back to 1991 and the promise made to Gorbachev by James Baker, the Secretary of State, that NATO would not move 1 inch east. And what Putin is really calling for is, okay, NATO, okay, United States, back off. Let's go to those original borders. Now, for anybody that has been listening to Russia, to Putin, to Lavrov, and reading some of the pundits here in Russia, you absolutely know that there is not going to be a ceasefire. There's not going to be any peace talks. Donald Trump is in over his head right now. He's no match for Putin. He's no match for Lavrov or any of the other Russians that are engaging with the United States right now. So in terms of any fear that anybody has that Trump is going to play Putin, they've got it all wrong. Now, Tony, geez, you're writing a love story about an American man who married a Russian woman.
No, they didn't get married, not yet, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh, you don't? Well,
I don't know. It's writing itself.
This American man, after a long courtship of almost 8 years, married a Russian woman.
Congratulations.
Married a Russian woman a couple of months ago.
And for you.
That's
is that the woman with the red hair? I saw a photo of her. Does she have red hair?
Yeah, well, it's kind of auburn colored, yeah.
But she looks like a very young woman for such a.
Let's not go there. She's younger than I am.
Good for you.
Well, good luck.
Natalia has met her.
Yeah. Congratulations, actually.
Yeah, thank
tapping
you.
through your conversation. I was listening carefully.
Your mic is muted.
Only happiness. No.
No, I
it's
hear her.
okay. Can you hear me
I
now?
hear you.
I
Okay.
can hear you, but
So again,
okay, go ahead.
congratulations again. I wish you happiness and I don't know, many years together, regardless the age.
You're good.
Heard all of you speak. Yeah. Can
Well,
you hear me?
yeah, we can.
Okay. So just a few brief remarks that yes, today we live in a world where mainstream media are just, I don't know, spreading, what can I say, bullshit all over the place. And when we see that a person like Andrew Tate has a larger audience than CNN now, this, I don't know, it looks really strange to me. But what we all face, I think, is that all these mainstream media are giving us opinions which they sell to us as if these opinions are truth. And as we probably all have already understood, that information is not always truth. It's just information. And since we have witnessed, particularly in Armenia, in post-Soviet Union countries, the infiltration of this soft power from the West that's begun like the night after the collapse of Soviet Union, and sometimes even before, like 2-3 years before the Soviet Union was dismantled totally. We have already had all these strange NGOs in Armenia. Yes, we did have them, such as Peace Corps from the United States, which is, we all know what it is, and several other strange organizations that have been founded in Armenia even before the Soviet Union was over, in the beginning of the 90s, like in 89, 90, already they were here. And this soft power that infiltrated firstly into the education system, especially in post-Soviet Union countries, because education is one of the most expensive areas. I mean, for the state, it is always expensive to keep up your education system because you have to pay like many people, etc., etc. So they were all very friendly to all these strange foreign projects and scholarships and grant systems. And today in Armenia, we have a whole generation of lecturers who are teaching our younger generation now, and they're teaching them, indoctrinating them with this globalist agenda that they have been taught to when they were participating in all sorts of exchange programs in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in the EU countries, and all over the Western countries. So indeed, yes, as Regis said, if Russia really wants to achieve the Nazification of Ukraine, the same as we want to achieve here in Armenia, return to our, I don't know, national identity, it will take years and re-education of generations. So a lot of work to do. And indeed, sometimes I too feel a little, not tired, but just don't feel like we're getting anywhere, even in a small country as Armenia. But it's rooted so deeply inside almost any sphere, especially if we look at the state. We can see these globalist influence everywhere in the Ministry of Justice system, in the police, in the military, everywhere. And they're not serving an agenda of Armenian national interest. So we live we live in a world which is not a good place. But probably it is also why we're all here today and talking about things that people usually don't discuss. Probably somewhere in Russia, people discuss it in their kitchens, sometimes drinking tea, because it's an old Soviet habit, you know. Everybody was criticizing Soviet Union in their kitchens, but nobody ever spoke anything in public. So we do maintain this little culture of talking about tough things. That's it.
Oh, thanks, Natalia.
Can I offer one ray of hope?
Yeah, go ahead.
The ray of hope, ironically, may be Donald Trump himself. Not in a good way, but that he's setting everything on fire.
Yeah.
And as a result, you know, the people who are lockstep behind the United States are suddenly having second thoughts and saying, hey, wait a minute, we've been getting screwed in this deal. And they're only now waking up to it. I got a sense of that when I was in Europe. A couple of things I noticed was the lack of Ukrainian flags in Paris. I saw one Ukrainian flag in the 10 days I was in Paris, and it was flying in front of the French Foreign Ministry, along with some sign that said "Stand with Ukraine" or something. And I saw it in London only at the Canadian embassy. They have a bunch of flags out in front. Most of them are Canadian, but interspersed with several Ukrainian flags. That was it. I saw a bunch of things about, you know, stop sending weapons and money to Ukraine. We've had enough. And Trump is I think beginning to accelerate Europe's disenchantment with the United States. And that's a good thing because, as Ron pointed out, you know, we've been the ringmaster since 1945. We've been the most aggressive country on the planet and the most dangerous country on the planet. And probably even really before that, if you want to get down to it, because, but whatever. But I mean, we've been the world's aggressor, and and the Europeans have gone with us because partly in the beginning, they really had no choice. But now they're waking up to realize there is a choice. And that's the hope of the emerging multipolar world, that there will be no single pole of power, but a number of poles of power. And as people begin to want their sovereignty back, which I hope they will at some point, then this country will lose the influence that it has deserved to lose for a long time. I don't say that as someone who hates America. There are things about this country that I do love, but the things that I hate, I really hate. I mean, corporate America, military America, and political America, I have no use for at all. But there is an America out there of people just trying to live their lives. And they're not involved. I mean, out here in California, we're talking about this stuff, but honestly, I very rarely hear this kind. Nobody's talking about Ukraine in the coffee houses or, you know, and most of them still can't find it on a map. So, you know, you know, they're talking about, you know, what did my basketball team do last night? Or, you know, what's my girlfriend getting up to when I'm on a business trip? You know, it's you know, it's the little things, right? And I have no kick with that. That's just being human. But let's hope that Trump just ignites the thing and it doesn't lead to a war, but that it does lead to a recalibration of the world so that people can just start living their lives for a change.
Eric,
Nice.
you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, a few things. First, Ron, I have your book. It's a great book.
No.
So thank you for your effort.
Yeah, good.
And, you know, there's a saying, you know, Gramsci. Now, I'm living in Thailand, and Thailand is a peaceful country. There are problems here. There are homeless people, but not lots, but you see them. And but the country is basically a peaceful, nice country. So maybe that's the reason why my mood is generally pretty good. But I wanted to just say that, you know, Gramsci said pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. We can't, you know, if the globalists or whoever these assholes are who are running things, they want us to be discouraged, and we just can't let them do that. You know, don't let the bastards get you down. So I just wanted to say that. As far as the U.S. is concerned, you know, the word "the system" has come up, and we're in a global system. It is not working, and and people say, "Oh, you hate America." And on my recent post, I said, you may think I'm pro-Russian. I said, I'm not pro-Russian. I'm American. I'm pro-American. I want the country to live up to what it was supposed to be. And what it was supposed to be, the American Revolution was to get rid of kings and to have self-determination, and it was about democracy. That was Tom Paine. But the problem was that the revolution was betrayed. There was basically a stealth counter-revolution. It was a coup that took place that allowed the bankers and the slaveholders to write the Constitution in favor of themselves. And it's been a civil war between the 90% or the 95% of the people and the oligarchs who've been running the country since since the Constitution was written. They gave the people a few crumbs in the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights, but basically, it's been a war of the super rich against the rest of us and against the rest of the world all along. Now, I majored in German literature, and one of the courses that I took was called The German Resistance to Hitler. And there were several different aspects of the German resistance. The communists, of course, they were just gotten rid of, killed, or sent to concentration camps. Many of the main German intellectuals, like Marlene Dietrich or Thomas Mann or Hermann Hesse, people like that, Albert Einstein left in 1932. He was a smart guy. He left before the shit really hit the fan. So there was, you had this German intellectual element that was against the Nazis, but at a certain point, there was a group of people who came together called the Kreisau Circle, right. And these were a combination. About this. I'm amazing. They're very. I know Germans that they don't know this. So the Kreisau Circle was a group of trade unionists and wealthy. Wealthy conservatives and aristocrats, and they were all saying this system is fucked. It's done terrible things, but there's not much that we can do about it. In fact, it's better for it to just collapse because it has to become completely discredited in the eyes of its own people. The reason why people are so in denial is because they're not willing to face that fact that the system is so bad. And it's going to take a complete collapse, which Trump may be inducing, whether he's aware of it or not. There's a deeply self-destructive component to the consciousness of the people who are actually running the United States. They're parasitic, and yet they also are destroying they're destroying themselves, actually. And it's up to people like us to, kind of keep the flame of consciousness going so that when the shit really does hit the fan, then there will be some people saying, see, we told you so, and this is what we have to do. And you have people like Michael Hudson or other sound thinking people who do offer an alternative. They have no power. They've been pushed out, but it's our job to just keep up our spirits and be ready to to serve and build the consciousness when the circumstances change.
Well, just to show you the mindset of some people, I was at the cafe this morning and one of my friends said, this might be a good time to buy, because the stock market's tanking. It's like, that's the mentality. They're just thinking about getting rich. I mean, that's it, man. That's the country we live in, or I live in.
I want to mention just a second, Ron. I have a friend. Her name is Joan Moore. She was a union officer for a number of years. She used to talk about fighting the scurrilous corporate scumbags, and she's completely in line with you. And I'm going to give you her email. I'll give her your email address, and I'll say, "You're not alone, Joan. There's another guy you can talk to."
I'll talk to her. Why not? We can be lonely together. Yeah.
Right.
Ron, go ahead.
Yeah, it's probably wrong of me to oppose optimism, but that's a misanthropy that in me that somehow or another I've latched onto. I think that nature makes mistakes. I mean, there are all kinds of insects and animals that they make that can't reproduce, and they do the same thing to human beings. Now, of course, I'm not anti-gay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, that's what, a little mistake. Nature makes mistakes. And I think it's quite possible that when they decided that Homo sapiens should come out of what is called in anthropology killer apes, and not, chimpanzees and not bonobos. I mean, they fucked up. I mean, they gave us this brain where we can destroy the whole planet, and we got idiots in power, and they'll be there tomorrow too, I think. They were there yesterday. I mean, it was Truman, a fucking Democrat, that dude Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that was the same fucking Democrat that all kinds of so-called progressives and liberals and even socialists and socialist governments voted for. He had Operation Drop Shot. 400 nuclear bombs were to be dropped on 200 targets in 100 cities of the Soviet Union in 1950 or 51. And fortunately, two very brave, one German, and one, Ted Hall, a young kid from the United States, a Jew too, they gave the information necessary to the Soviets so that they got their bomb in 49, and that stopped the Truman from, making a third world war where they would have taken over Russia. Now, nobody ever says that. I mean, I never hear it in Regis' videos. I never hear it anywhere. I never see Putin say it. I mean, and they invaded in the summer of 1918 with 13,000 troops and 300,000 in all, 70,000 from Japan and UK, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the United States has been after to take, and UK before that, take over Russia, since forever, So, I mean, but Putin is great, but will he, cease fire? I don't know about that, Regis. The wind seems to be, changing. Now there are a bunch of Republicans coming out and saying, "Hey, you're going too far. You're too much in Putin's, pocket." I watch, unfortunately, European media sometimes just to keep up. What are these idiots all about? And they want a war with Russia. There are virkily many goddamn known and unknown to you people, leadership in this country that want Russia, they want that Russia to not be Russia any longer. So, and China, I don't trust China. They were with the United States 3 times. They were with them in apartheid in Angola. They were with them and with Pol Pot in Cambodia, and they were with them in oh no, yes, Afghanistan. They helped the United States against the communist government in Afghanistan that Russia finally supported. They didn't want to support it. It took them 6 months to come into that. All this information that I'm telling you now, I don't see in anything I read or hear, I mean, people should know all the more. And Putin should be able to say this too. Hey, we know you and we no, I'm sorry, Putin. I'm just so fucking negative, It's just like, I don't think this is easy, Reggie. No, of course you don't think it's easy either, but I don't know that Trump is even going to be able to continue to go as far as he has gone because he's already got backlash. He's not even been there 3 months, and many of his people are beginning to worry about him, okay? He doesn't have 4 years free, and the CIA doesn't want him. But but why didn't he appoint somebody that could do something to the CIA? He's in the Pentagon, and he just took $80 million away from the Pentagon. That's fucking lunch for the generals. I mean, he's a lot of hot air, but I don't see there's a lot of He let the fucking Europeans take over. He let the UK be a United Kingdom again. That fucking so-called labor states minister, that son of a bitch Dahmer. You say Putin's got him like a drum. Well, he's trying to drum Trump too, And Meta Fredrickson, the Social Democrat where I live, they're all trying to take Trump's drum, and he's got problems in his background. So I mean, I don't know that this war is going to really end. I mean, not tomorrow.
It'll end if the Russians have the will to end it.
But it's not just the will. Why doesn't China help them? China is even buying less of their gas than they were.
Well, from China's point of view, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. And plus, I don't think they have to. I think Russia's capable of winning this war.
They can't beat 70, they can't beat 30 countries in NATO alone.
Okay, hang on, Blush. I'm going to let you have the last word. We've gone just about an hour and a half with just 6 of us. I can't imagine what's going to happen if we have 10, 15, or 20 people. I'll have to get out a bullwhip or something like that. I think a couple of things have really been clear. I think we very much are in alignment with what we know and what we're thinking and what we envision. And we're talking about systemic change. We're talking about trying to envision a future that benefits all. And I think that's basically, in my mind, what I hope that this group can continue to promote, to embellish, to clarify. Anyway, this has been really good. I've been very pleased to see those of you that are here. There's another 10 others who told me emphatically they wanted to join. So I'll have to kind of put a little pressure on all of them to take part in this. Blush, I'm going to turn it over to you for a final word.
Thank you very much. Just briefly, I don't want to go strategic or paradigmatic or into the field of political economy today. I would just like to briefly touch on some of your thoughts. I'm also Holocaust survivor, 3rd generation, which some people like to say today. My grandmother was killed in Auschwitz in 1942. And my whole family on father's and mother's side was engaged from 41 into fight against occupiers coming from all sides, which I described before. So that's why I would like to say a few words about Judaism, Jews, because it's been very instrumentalized and misused today. Some years ago, I was asked to give a speech on the Holocaust Remembrance Day as a speaker of the 2nd chamber, and I expressed my respect for Jews and their faith, but I also explained that we, the Slovenians, had our Holocaust, and among the concentration camps, one of the fiercest was the Croatian in Jasenovac, where thousands of Slovenians were tortured and killed. And I think the organizers did not like that line too much. That line because the Holocaust is sort of trademark brand, which is misused and exploited today. My experience with Jewish people was always very positive, and I was respectful, because what I could notice was that there was above average number of Jewish artists, musicians, scientists, and so on. So it is a very positive thing. But I think that is especially now after the Palestinian genocide, we have to say very loudly, we, all the people, Americans, Jews, Slovenians, Armenians, we are all the same. Nobody's better, nobody's worse. Because this simple principle, which is also written in the United Nations Charter, although United Nations is a special case, let's leave it aside. But there are some good documents, and one is the Charter of Human Rights. And the Jews, simply the Jewish authorities, they do not, the Israeli authorities today do not accept this. They define themselves as Übermensch, which is totally unacceptable. But actually, Israel is not a classical state. It's a military outpost, which is a globalist project from Balfour Declaration, Balfour, Rothschild, agreement in the beginning of previous century on. So it's not a normal state. It's a military outpost. But I would also like not just to briefly touch United States. I think it is oversimplifying to say that United States is the center of all evil of the world today. I would claim that the United States are being enslaved by some forces in the background and used against the Americans and against the rest of the world. Because the fact of the matter is that after Second World War, the United States became the global empire. But this empire has influence. We don't have too much time today. I would just throw for thinking and further discussion something which I would connect to what Natalia said before regarding Ottoman Empire. The richest man of all times was in 17th century Jakob Fugger from Augsburg, Germany. And he established a monetary system in cooperation with Vatican, which has been developing and which is prevailing today. And this is the main controlling force. If you will try to see what happened to Ottoman Empire, you will see that the British actually took control of their central bank in 19th century. And similar case was with India. So when we talk about Gandhi, we should not forget that Gandhi was decorated by British Empire for his services. And what he actually managed to do was transforming British colony into a neo-colonial asset, which we can only look at today. What is India today? Is it working for the people, or is it the country with the greatest disparities in wealth? And maybe one concluding thought, let us not forget the event 201 in New York before the start of COVID-19 project. There was representatives from United States, from United Nations, and from China. And have just then have a look which powers were promoting masks and vaccinations, and we come to the more realistic picture of who is on our side and who is not on our side. I would conclude this trying to some connecting thoughts with.
Injection.
Beg your pardon?
No, go ahead.
Yeah,
Ron was in the background.
Yeah, I was just trying to conclude that we have a problem today, which is not one state against the other state. It's not again between United States and Russia or China. It is a class war. It is even a caste war. It is a global predatory elite against all of us and the nature.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to conclude, and I want to first of all thank you. I hope it's okay with you that I send this recording to the other people that I've invited. And what I will do for those of you that are here is I'll share your emails now with each other. And once others join the group and we get to know each other, everybody will be able to have everybody's email. So I hope that's okay with you. I think that a recording of this might encourage some of the others who've been invited to join us when they get a sense and they feel the resonance of what we've experienced here this evening and today. So I'm going to stop the recording for now. I'll stop the end the meeting, and I'm going to try to do this again in maybe 10 days to 2 weeks. I'm not going to let a whole lot of time go in between. So that's what we can be looking forward to.